Thanks very much for having me along. It's like something that the other speakers have actually said. You don't get asked by Mary. You get summoned to come to these things. So when I was told we're doing an official opening, I says, yes, sure, come up. And she says, right, okay. It's just a small event, and then you arrive, and there's 150 people, a marquee, and then international speakers. I thought we were coming up to cut a ribbon, and that's the norm. But as I'm sure you realise, Mary doesn't do we. It is always on the grander and larger scale. Some of you are wondering, I suppose, what's someone from the housing executive doing at an event like this? And I think by way of perspective, I think it's important to get across to you really what the housing executive and the likes of Women's Aid and voluntary groups that we work with, how we work in partnership. It's really, really important to what we want to achieve and what we want to do. And it's not just the money. Although when Mary comes into your office and said, I have an idea, the only way to get her out is to say yes. And any of you that have been in that situation, and I've said, I have to go for my tea here, she says, so? She just keeps you going and keeps at you until she does it right. One thing I would say about her, though, is that when she comes with an idea, it's well thought out. I have an idea, and then she produces a business case and sets it in front of you. It's not one of these things, I have an idea, what do you think, and then I'll leave it. She comes with everything prepared. The housing executive work with Foyle Women's Aid in a number of ways. And it's not just in relation to the funding of the revenue costs of the staff for the provision of the day-to-day service at the refuge that you're going to look at today. It's a much wider thing. Mary just doesn't operate in Derry. She goes right across the northwest with services in Strabane, Limavady. Have I got them all? Yeah. And it is phenomenal the number of folk that she actually helps at any given time in terms of the refuges, and they're always full. There's at least 20, I think there's 25 bed spaces. All of them are fully occupied all the time, which is a real tragedy. But what would happen if they weren't there? In addition to that, we have 100 units that we would call in terms of floating support. It's not just about when the folks find themselves in crisis and at the front door of the refuge. It's what happens afterwards. They're not just found a house and pushed on. They're given support for a long time afterwards. And indeed, unfortunately, and that's the nature of the beast that we're actually talking about here, there are recurrences in terms of folks that find themselves as repeat victims of this. And indeed, Foyle Women's Aid have been a leading light in terms of actually bringing forth the model in terms of how you develop floating support across Northern Ireland, and indeed GB, and it's well recognised that way. That's the sort of thing that I think that folk don't realise. It doesn't stop at the door when someone arrives at the refuge. It's afterwards, and I think that we have to recognise that as well. In terms of funding for domestic violence, I would say in Northern Ireland, we do recognise it. I mean, and the Assembly, our Minister, our Department, and the Housing Executive see this as a priority. It is key to a number of key strategies that we actually have. Within our homelessness strategy, there's a specific, clear guidance as this is what we want to do and how we want to take it forward. Again, within our supporting people strategy, there's a separate section saying domestic violence needs to be treated as a priority, and it has been for the last number of years, which is reflected in terms of the funding that goes into the new build as well. We have a programme here that the Housing Executive, through our Housing Association grant funding to the builders' apex here, have contributed significantly to. And it's not just because Mary's Mary, it's because it actually makes a difference, and we see it as making a difference. There are outcomes coming out of that we recognise and measure indeed. She just doesn't get the money and walk away with it. We actually look to see what she's doing. We check it on a regular basis. She tells me very, very often what she's actually doing and why she needs more money to do it. So far, we've been in a really good position to actually assist her through that, and I'm hoping that will remain the case. In terms of a priority, it actually helps us in our day-to-day business as well. We are a partner with Mary, not just on the funding side, but on the dealing with the homelessness that actually comes out of domestic violence. both in terms of referrals when we have nowhere to put someone, and indeed trying to arrange with Mary and our colleagues where some of the folks that are victims of this violence can actually move on to. So we work very closely on a day-to-day operational level at our local office and area, but also strategically as well. As I said, it's a great privilege and pride to actually see what is going on in here. I have been up here on a number of occasions, and you might know, and Mary is a force of nature when it comes to these things. She didn't buy the house in the first place. She had it donated to her. How she got that donated to her, I don't know. You know, but she seems to have some way that she can open doors and indeed purse strings to actually get things done on that. From what I've seen here, I think it's maybe 5-6 years ago, the first time I actually come up, to what has actually been put in place today is a real credit, not just to Mary, but all the partners that are involved in this, from the housing associations, from the department that actually gives us the money in the first place, from our own colleagues in the housing executive, and indeed the other bodies. I would highlight their PBNI, probation in particular, that have been involved as well. I just want to take this opportunity to say, well done to get it to this point, and to say, hopefully, it's only the start of what you can go forward in the future. And I'm really, really intrigued in terms of what you're doing on the criminal justice side, in terms of your centre there as well. Just finally, it is and remains a priority. It's a real slight on our society that we have to have this in the first place. I just hope that the service and the accommodation, etc., that is attached to the service here continues to actually provide what is needed for this particular area. So thanks very much.